Welcome, everyone, and welcome to the Animal Reiki chat for our special event for this month, because we're at the International House of Reiki. We're doing a special Animal Reiki month. So we've got some special blogs and web classes, and we're doing this lovely interview today with some people from some different places around the world who are working with animals, and we thought it would be really nice for everyone to get an idea of what's going on in the world and perhaps some of the things that they could do where they live. And so we'll start off. I'll go along the road, and next to me in the picture there is Kathleen Lester. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, Bronwen.
And then next to Kathleen, we have Janet Dobbs. Hey, Janet.
Hi, Bronwen. I should say hi.
And one more over, we have Ilona Schenk. Hey,
hi,
Ilona. All right. So I'm just going to ask some questions, and then we can get into discussion. So I'll start with Kathleen. Kathleen, if you wouldn't mind telling us just a little bit about where you live, so what part of the world, and what you do, and the services that you are offering with animals.
Sure. I'm Kathleen Lester. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm with the Animal Reiki Alliance. And we offer Animal Reiki services in person and distance. We also offer Animal Reiki services in the veterinary hospital during surgery, pre-surgery, post-surgery. We also offer animal communication. We teach all levels of Animal Reiki, and we also offer animal communication and teach animal communication as well.
Wow, that's a full spectrum. Everything.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, okay. And are there many people involved in that? Is it?
I'm the only person that, well, I run the facility. I have a studio here, and we do have some other practitioners that work for the Animal Reiki Alliance who do Reiki in different settings.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's just mostly me, but yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool, lovely, thank you. Janet, so tell me where you are and, you know, what you do and the different services that you're offering where you are.
I live outside of Washington, D.C. in Virginia, so right down the road from Baltimore, the Reiki Alliance. That's amazing. I had no idea. So right now I teach Animal Reiki and I teach animal communication. I'm focusing on teaching now. In the past, I also did consultations for animal communication as well as Animal Reiki consultations, sessions. And I was a founding member for SARA, Shelter Animal Reiki Association. So I did a lot of work with various shelters and rescues in the Northern Virginia area.
Cool.
So that's the short version.
Yep, thank you. And Ilona. Hello, Ilona. Tell me, where are you and what do you do?
I'm in Sydney, Australia.
Yep.
I volunteer at a shelter in Blacktown. I offer services like going into the kennels, offering Reiki to the dogs, offering humans Reiki at the shelter because they get burnout. So I usually go with the human maybe outside the chicken coop, and we sit there and offer Reiki to them. It actually helps the chooks as well. They tend to relax and they share the Reiki with us. I haven't taught anyone Animal Reiki as yet, but definitely looking into that.
Yeah.
At the moment, offering Reiki to the animals, to the dogs outside the shelter and inside the shelter, meaning outside the kennel and inside the kennel, sorry. And humans, that's basically, and the staff there.
Yeah. All right. Lovely. Thank you. Okay. So, I better say I'm Bronwen, and I teach Reiki, but in my Reiki classes, I include working with animals. So I don't do it as a separate class as such. But I love animals, and I live with lots of beautiful animals, both domestic and wild animals, and just in the environment. And I also do animal distance healing and treatments on animals. So definitely a very strong interest of mine, and that's why it's lovely that we can do this. And it's nice for people to find out a little bit more about how they might possibly go about doing something like this at home, or, you know, if they wanted to reach out to someone, how they might do that if they have an animal that they'd like to, that needs some help too. Yeah. So, Kathleen, I was wondering what started you working with animals?
I've always loved animals. I grew up on a farm, and we had 40 horses and lots of cows and chickens and all kinds of dogs and cats. And so I've always loved animals. And when I got into Reiki, sort of as my own personal healing journey, my first, of course, inclination was to be drawn to animals. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing that I loved about working with the animals is that they don't lie, where people may lie on a table and not say whether they had a great session or not. The animals will just get up and walk away. So they were a great mirror for me and a great learning, great for learning. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And Janet, how did you get into all of this?
Oh, gosh. I learned about Reiki when I was taking an advanced animal communication workshop way back in the 90s. And I walked out into the classroom, which was on a farm, and we were all staying there. And all of these, about, 5 females were standing around doing this, and they were smiling. And I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, Reiki. And now I know they were playing with energy. Yeah. But they were happy. I didn't know what Reiki was. And so I went home and I took a class. And that's how I got into Reiki. But everything I do is because of the animals. So as I was learning Reiki and building my animal communication practice, the animals taught me how to do Reiki. So before, and that's why when I met you and Franz in 2007, my life completely changed, literally. I worked in broadcast television, and the day that I came to see you guys, my life changed. I came home and I was no longer on the work schedule after 30 years. So the animals have shown me how to practice Reiki. And the reason I mentioned, meeting you and Franz and that changing my life was as I was learning that way of practicing Reiki, it's like, that's what the animals taught me. Because the animals will show us how to respond. It's like they reflect us. And so we know if we're doing something not quite right because they'll leave. Yeah. So I kind of came to things in that way through the animals. Animal communication got me there first. But I really love practicing Reiki. And like you, when I teach a Reiki class, it's always for humans. But then I always have the animals with us and then teach them how to work with the animals as we're learning the various parts of. But
I've got a cat and a dog that insist on being in the classes. And then the chickens are at the door, peck, 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 with the ducks. And, but they're not allowed in. But I actually do. The cat and the dog are just one of the cats and dogs that they just insist. And there's no way of keeping them out. So, it's a lovely thing to have that happening at the same time. And I think for people, I actually, I recently had someone who was unwell in the class, and I was having an episode of some sort, and the dog was there immediately, and she really liked the dog, and the dog was there, and she just held the dog while she was going through that process and, in the class. And the dog just lay there like, I'll just be here for you. I'll just do whatever. And that was, a really wonderful way of helping that person go through what they needed to do. I couldn't imagine what would happen if the dog wasn't there, how, that person would have felt quite alone and isolated, I think. But having someone with them that wasn't going to judge them, like Kathleen was saying, not lying, not anything, then just being there for them, with them, was in itself incredibly healing. Yeah. That's fantastic. Ilona, how did you get into working at the shelter?
I've always loved animals, as you know, because I've just loved being around them. I just can't get enough. So I just one day just went, okay. So I put my name down in a few shelters, and I found this one in Blacktown. And it wasn't until probably about a year later that I said to them, look, I'm a Reiki practitioner. I'd love to, offer Reiki. And at first I was very hesitant.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh yeah, that's all witchy poo and all this sort of stuff. But they said, oh yeah, my mum does Reiki. So it all started by doing an actual, because the boss said to me, oh, how do I do, what's this Reiki? What is it? So I said, look, next week when I come in, I'll give you a treatment and you'll know exactly what it is. So I gave him one. He said, oh, that's really, really nice. And I said, well, it works too. Like if I give you a treatment and there's an animal around, the animal actually can respond as well.
Yeah.
And oh, that's interesting. So I think probably a couple of weeks later, we went out in the leash free area, and he sat out there, and he chose a dog. The dog came out, and I just gave him like just a chair treatment.
Yeah.
And the dog came out, and he was running around. And then once we started the actual process of doing the treatment, the dog came up and jumped on his lap and licked him in the face and all that sort of stuff. And it was so cute. And I said to him afterwards, I said, oh, how do you feel? And he said, oh, I felt really nice, but I felt that dog lick me in the face. I said, yeah, sometimes that's the dog responding to the energy.
Mm.
Oh, that's really quite interesting. Yeah. So, my love of animals, like I did course with you in France for a few years ago. And what got me, I think, really started was, sorry, what is your dog's name? Anyway, your fluffy white dog.
Bowie. No.
No, your little fluffy.
Oh,
Rosie. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rosie jumped on my lap, and we'd just finished, I think we're having lunch, and Rosie jumped on my lap, and I just felt this ball of energy just around Rosie, and it just sort of, it was like a reiju, but a complete, with Rosie on my lap. And I just went, oh my goodness, what is this?
Yeah.
And from there on, I just went, okay, I'm going to experiment on animals. So I sat down with my rabbit one day. It was thundering outside. So I sat outside with my rabbit and offered it Reiki, and it just, that's where it started really blossoming, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, lovely. Nice. And who else? What else? Kathleen. Sort of going up and down the row. But anyway, feel free to join in, guys, if you've got anything to say. So, Kathleen, I know that you, do you work in shelters as well? I think you might.
I do. I've worked at the Baltimore Animal Care Rescue Group here in Baltimore City. It's the kill shelter associated with animal control, and I'm working on having a whole student program at the SPCA here as well. So,
fantastic.
It's been amazing to work with the animals in the shelter.
How did you, like Ilona was saying, how she sort of introduced herself, because it can be a little odd, and I think it's great for people to hear about people's experiences and how they've done that. So how did you introduce yourself in the beginning with that?
In the beginning, about 10 years ago, I lived on the same block, or about a block from the deputy director of the facility. And so I asked her for an introduction, and I got in, and then they weren't really sure what Reiki was, but they let me do it anyway. And so once they started to see how it worked, I would come in, and there would be a whole list of animals for me to work with that day.
Right.
And they understand, and then they would be able to give me feedback, which was kind of nice to just, I did a session and then I never saw the dog again. I'd be able to, which dogs got adopted, which ones were doing better after surgery, things like that. So it was a lot of fun in that way.
So what were the sort of things? What were the sort of things that what were the reasons that they chose those animals for Reiki?
They never really told me. They were just on a list. A lot of them were high risk of euthanasia because they may have had a respiratory infection or something along those lines. Ones that were really doing poorly in the shelter with anxiety, those are the ones they also put on the list. But some of them I never knew what was wrong with them. They would just put them on the list, and I'd work with them, and then we'd go from there.
Okay. I thought that was interesting, how Ilona said that she got someone to actually sit there, and then the animals, so really she was just sort of opening up to the energy in a way, and in a human way, if you like, and then just allowing that to be open, of course, for anyone or everything, and that the animals would then come to that. What is your experience with that, with the animals, coming to you or away from you, or how does that work?
It's about let the animals choose how they want to participate in the session and just sharing the energy.
Yeah.
I worked in the shelter with a lot of dogs in animal control. And so there was a lot of aggressive animals that I worked with. So I couldn't always just sit in a room and allow them to come to me. Sometimes we had to go for walks, and sometimes we'd sit out by the picnic table. I'd really just try to address the dog where they were and where their comfort was.
Yeah.
But it's all about them and what they want out of the session, allowing them to come and share the energy any way that they decide.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And Janet, I think you've also done some shelter work, right?
I've done, in a different way.
Yeah.
Lots of different shelters. And so you were talking about how do you approach a shelter? Because I think that's a really important issue. Question. A lot of Reiki practitioners would love to be doing that, but how do you get into the shelter? How do you make that contact? I had that issue when I was first starting, and back then people didn't even really talk about, Reiki, or so it was even a little bit more of a challenge. But meeting somebody, maybe finding that contact, that's what it really took. I had a friend who went to a yard sale at a horse rescue, and she started talking to them and anyhow introduced me, and I built a huge program. I taught Reiki and animal communication for probably 10 years at this one horse rescue, just because of that. I just I kind of made I worked at Humane Society of Fairfax County, which is not the shelter. It's a no-kill shelter, but they work alongside of the kill shelter. But getting in with them, it took a little bit of going back and talking to finding someone that wanted to talk to me, and then finding the right way to open that door.
Yeah.
And then they would allow me, they wanted to see by example. So I would come and sit with the cats, or go out to, they have a farm with the dogs and horses. And then I forget how I had a contact at a bunny rescue. I just, so talking about a bunny, they're in my heart. And so that was really, really fun. But working getting your foot in the door with, getting your foot in the door at a rescue can be a challenge. So learning different ways that people have actually made that happen.
So do you have any recommendations? Well, I guess what you recommended was to make a contact, which is what Kathleen said as well, wasn't it? Finding someone. And I guess in a way that's also what Ilona said, if you can get someone on your side, then that's sort of the in. And I like the idea of doing a treatment on someone as a way of
that's really good.
Introducing it. Yeah. Any other suggestions?
I think also, if you really want to work with shelter animals, you could go and volunteer yourself as just a regular old whatever volunteers do, the different aspects, getting to know people, and then they feel comfortable with who you are as a person.
Yeah.
They can maybe even observe you, because we naturally offer Reiki, whether we know it or not. We're naturally doing it just by being with the animals. So learn it, watching us, observing us, and then you find that opening, and then you present it, or offer like that, let me offer it to you, or you want to see how, I'll be just off,
Yeah. And I guess ideally we, when we work on ourselves, we'd like to be, in that Reiki space 24 hours a day, right? In that sense of being in that openness, and for animals, and for anyone and everyone, and for ourselves. So I guess the more that we even if we might not officially be the Reiki practitioner at the shelter, which is sort of, you know, we're just at the shelter with the animals, and we are in that space, and we are open, and that is just as wonderful to be able to offer that, and to be that for the animals, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would also agree that, you know, sometimes you don't find the right person in the shelters because the shelters are so, you know, they're understaffed, they're overworked. And I've tried with the SPCA, I've probably for the last 2 or 3 years, I mean, my studio is like literally a block from them.
Right.
And trying to find an inn has been a challenge. And I finally found the right person through, you know, one of my students in my class was like, oh, I volunteer at the shelter, I can connect you with this. So sometimes not giving up
Yep.
and continuing just to knock on the door is what it takes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, because I have offered myself to a shelter in Katoomba. It's a little bit from here, but yeah, they just don't really respond because, you know, they don't really,
Right.
you know, yeah, they don't really know what that is or who I am, you know.
Right.
So I think that if I were to pursue that more, you just got to keep at it and at it and at it, which I haven't done. So it's something that a good hint for me, thank you, Kathleen, to just keep at it and maybe because it is such a wonderful thing to be able to offer, right? And to be there for those animals, because it's such a, as you said earlier, a high stress environment. Yeah. I think, Ilona, yeah, sorry?
I was going to say, I also offer 4 spots in every one of my classes for anybody who volunteers or works in a shelter as a way of trying to engage more folks as well. And, you know, give back, of course.
Yeah. No, that's a great idea too. Yeah. And that starts a real community network as well, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
I also think familiarising yourself, making yourself known at the shelter first, taking the dogs for a walk, just, you know, let them get to know you before, you actually even ask to offer Reiki. So just,
Yeah. So not necessarily going in there like, hey, I do this, that, you know, and I can do this. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Rather just being there and then slowly working.
I actually tried doing that there's a Zambi wildlife retreat. I don't know if you've heard of them. She rescues a lot of tigers and stuff like that. I rang her up one day, sent her an email and said, oh, I'm a Reiki practitioner. I'd love to come and offer Reiki to your tigers and whatnot. And she said, oh, we're not looking really for those kind of volunteers. We just want people to do this sort of stuff. And I went, oh, okay. So that didn't work for me either. But I think you may be persistent.
Yeah, that's
try
right.
Again.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Are there many wild tigers in Australia? Sorry. No. Tigers in Australia. I'm like,
circus rescues and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Okay. Hey, I wanted to hear a little bit about something that Kathleen had been doing, because Kathleen, you just recently had an article published in the American Holistic Veterinary Association Journal. And I was just wondering what that was. I know it's to do with some research that you've been doing, and you've been writing a book or have written a book. So tell us more about all of that.
Sure. One of the things that's part of my mission statement is to try to engage the veterinarians. And so I set out about 10 years ago, starting to collect all the research I could on Reiki in general and energy work, not just Reiki specific, but energy work. And over the last 10 years, I've been reading it and pulling it together. And I published a book on the research as well, and the Journal of American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association. Basically, most of the research is on humans and laboratory animals. There are no clinical studies with animals, which is unfortunate. And so now that I have something that I can hand to veterinarians, it's opening doors for me to be able to do a pilot study, and I'm hoping to do a full study. I won't name the facility yet because it's not 100% official, but I'm looking to have a funded study by February of next year on TPLO surgeries.
Yep.
Where we'll have 126 participants in a control and a treatment group. So we're hoping that that's going to come to fruition and really be the first clinical study with animals, which would be amazing, because
That would,
now, I mean, I hated to publish the laboratory animals, but I also felt like I needed to honor them as well, just because they had been part of an experiment and, you know, their lives mattered. So I wanted to include them.
It's really difficult, isn't it? I had the same when I was writing your Reiki treatment, and I did a section on research, and, you know, it was really hard looking up at all the research that anything, you know, a lot of the research is actually done on the poor mice and that, you know, and you know, they give them cancer and then they see, you know, if they can heal them from having cancer. It just...
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to do it that way. There's so many other ways this could be done without harming any animals.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. Can we buy your book? Because that would be useful.
Sure, it's on Amazon.
Yep.
And it's called Animal Reiki Research Implications for Practice.
Yep.
It's also on my website, and so is the article. The article's free. You can download it as a PDF.
Right. Well, that is fantastic, because that would be, as much as it's great for you to be able to offer to people, it's great for any of us to also be able to offer and get our ways into doing whatever it is that we want to do, whether it is to work in a shelter or to work with a local veterinarian. Yeah. So what's your experience of working with the vets?
Mixed. I mean, I have some vets who are really interested. My vet, I do Reiki pre-surgery, during surgery, and post-surgery.
Right.
You know, he allows me to do that. He has a form. I'm not getting paid for it. I volunteer it just for my own documentation and experience. With the other veterinarian, hopefully the study, I'll be in the OR again with them. And we'll research, you know, the treatment group and the non-treatment group. So some vets are real open to it and some aren't, and some don't want you in their operating room for obvious reasons. And it's so different being in the veterinary operating room than it is in the human operating room, because often in the human operating room you have your anesthesiologist, you have your nurses, you have all the specialists, you have, you know, this whole team. And when you walk into a veterinary OR, it's the vet and a vet tech. And they are the anesthesiologist, the helper, surgeon, they are everything. And so because of that, a lot of them don't want you in their OR. And it's also usually very crowded. There really isn't much space for you. So the ones that will let me back there, it's been good. The ones who say no, I can understand.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Janet, have you done any work with vets?
Yes. Right now, I have a veterinarian I've worked with since 1994 with my own animals is a holistic veterinarian. And a couple of years ago, he opened a holistic only practice.
Right.
And there's many modalities offered there at the facility, which is pretty impressive, I think. I think it's very exciting. And I started teaching all of my workshops there.
Oh, right. Okay.
But he's so it's really kind of unique, I feel. And I've known him, you know, for so many years, and I've seen this dream because he was a holistic practitioner at 2 different emergency centers in this area. So, but yeah, he finally was able to make his dream come true, and it's still growing, but I think it's really exciting, and that there are veterinarians that are open. And there are, of course, just like all humans, many that aren't yet.
Yeah.
And maybe they just haven't had it presented in the right way.
Yeah.
Because I know there's at Duke University there is I don't know what his position is. I think he's a professor, but he's in the veterinarian. I didn't know Duke University had veterinarians. I thought that was at a different university close by. Anyhow, I digress. but he's very open to Reiki.
Yeah.
He's very active. He's a supports Shelter Animal Reiki Association. Has talked about bringing not only animal Reiki, but animal communication to his vet students.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. For me, the thought of, if a veterinarian could open to these possibilities, even vets in their own private small practices, it could change everything, because they're already doing many of these things anyhow. They just don't know that that's what's happening.
Yeah, right. I think, it would be great for vets to actually learn Reiki themselves. We were just talking about that idea of really, and for the vet nurses and,
And
just because
techs,
it's something, being in that space. I know at my vets that they have, like that adaptable stuff or whatever that they put into the, the hormonal stuff that they put in the light switch. And it's sort of like a hormone, and it, the idea is that it gives off a calming sort of feeling in
pheromones,
the room. Yeah. So,
okay.
I mean, in many ways, that's what, we would be doing if we were doing Reiki in a way, right? So we're, we're in that calm space. We're open and relaxed, and then the animals are going to pick up on that. They're going to be calm and relaxed. And so, it would be amazing if someone could start up Reiki courses for vets or something like that. That would be an interesting place
I've
to go.
done that actually. I'm starting.
Really?
Hey, there we go.
Where? Where are you doing that? That's great.
Oh, at my studio here in Baltimore. I also teach at a couple of the veterinary schools, and I'm trying to get into more veterinary schools as well, because I'm not making as much headway with the veterinarians who are practicing. So I'm going for the students as well.
Yay.
And they're really excited and engaged. So I'm excited about that.
Wow. Well, that's another thing that, would be great to read about. And I think that if you document that sort of thing as well, I think great for other people to be able to show in their area, Kathleen is doing it here. So, this is how it works. And then being able to take that model or idea and doing it in their own area. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you write that stuff?
I'll be happy to share once I...
Sorry?
Yeah, I have manuals. I don't have specific veterinary Reiki manuals right now, but I'm working on those. Basically, as we know, Reiki at the core of everything, whether for human or animal, is the same. What's really different where I focus with the vets is I focus more on the research. I focus more on case studies and try to bring it to them in a way that they understand. They're very research oriented. They're very focused on details, things like that.
Course.
So that's kind of how I weave it into the classes in that way. So we do a lot more talking about research and things like that, just because that's what they're interested in. So sorry about the dog.
Hey. He's saying hi.
Three lovely pitties.
I just want to talk a little bit about, I think everyone here probably does work, distance healing with animals. I know that you also, some of you, now my dogs are barking. We've got everybody barking.
They're talking now.
They're all talking. They're having their own little animal Reiki chat. Yeah. But I know that, Kathleen, you were saying that you are focusing on healing families with Reiki.
Yes, absolutely.
So tell me about that.
We can work on the animals and we can send them back to their homes. And if the same thing happens in the home, we've only helped them for a short amount of time. So really being able to engage the humans either because their animal has a chronic condition and inviting them to come and take the class so that they start their own journey. Or actually doing work with the humans, engaging them in the Reiki process. So when I go to somebody's home, as we know, they think I'm sharing Reiki with the animal, but everybody in the household is getting what they need from that session. I think the most difficult thing I'm finding is how to have the conversation with the humans to help bring them, in for a Reiki session without being too invasive or intrusive into their lives, because they're bringing their animal to me, not themselves.
Of course.
So that part of the conversation is a little more tricky, but with love and patience, we usually get there. So I have probably about as many human clients as I do animal clients at this point.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask this of all of you, so have a little think, but how do you do that? How do you introduce to a human the idea that they might want to have some Reiki as well?
Usually it's over several sessions.
Yeah.
And usually you ask a lot of intake questions when I do all my notes and my documentation, asking questions of them, like what's going on in the household. It's helpful if I actually can go to the house. Oftentimes, I've got clients like you all over the world, so a lot of times we don't even know what the inside of the house looks like or who else is there. But, asking those questions, is there someone in the house who's anxious? Is there somebody in the house who's struggling or sick, or trying to get at some of those things? And then people also tell you what's going on in the house and how the animals are responding as well.
Yeah.
So sometimes just chatting with them without having an agenda, a lot of that information comes to the surface. And then saying, well, do you know that animals mirror their humans? Do you know that animals take on some of the things that we have? So if we're sick, they may take on an illness. If we're anxious, they may mirror that back to us. And so, explaining it to them in that way, usually then engages them, because as soon as they start to think, oh my goodness, I may be causing my pet harm, then they become engaged often.
Yeah, that's really important. And I think by doing the way you explain that, it helps people twig, maybe what I'm doing, so it makes them work on themselves as much as trying to do something for their animal. That's wonderful. Yeah, great idea. Ilona, tell me, how do you deal with the people who have animals and you're working with?
I was actually thinking of was when you asked that question to Kathleen, when I'm working at the shelter and I'm sitting with an animal that's possibly not well, usually when the animal's not well is when the other people who are volunteering go, oh, look at that poor dog, look at that poor dog. I mean, absolutely, the dog shouldn't be in that state, but it's all in their mind, like it's in your mindset as well. Like if you go past a dog, oh, look at that dog's going to feel absolutely miserable.
Yeah.
So by going in with the mindset that, hey, okay, you're not well, but I'm not going to put that energy across that you're not well. I'm going to treat you like I treat my own dog. Yeah. So I go in there and I'll sit with the dog. If there's someone with me, I'll go, oh, come in and sit with me. We'll sit down and pat the dog, talk to the dog, get into a nice quiet space, and I'll teach them just a tiny meditation.
Yeah.
That would help her and the dog then relax. And then the dog, sometimes, not always, will react in a way that that's more calming and not so stressful.
Yeah.
So, by teaching the other volunteers, the ones that are interested, obviously, some of them just sort of back away, which is fine. That's their journey. But yeah, just helping the other volunteers as well as the dog, or usually I volunteer with the dog. So so it's helping the volunteers as well as the animal by having them in the space. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely.
Space.
Yeah.
So it then helps the dog, and it's great. It's nice for the animal to sort of think, oh, well, my life can't be so bad.
Yeah.
But I
think it's the same with fear as well, isn't it? If people are going, oh my God, that's a really scary dog, and everybody's like this with the dog, that's not going to help the dog to actually feel calmer or happier, right? Same thing. Yeah.
And I do bring the precepts in, even for myself a lot when I'm in the shelter. Like even if I'm out walking the dog, and I'm thinking, oh, this dog's a little bit nervous, okay, so am I. Yeah. Then I'll start the precepts. I'm walking the dog in my mind. I'll start, doing my precepts, and after a while, sometimes it actually calms us both down.
Yeah.
So I take the dog back to its kennel. It's like, okay, this is great. And I throw in a treat, and then it's just happy. It sits there, eats the treat, and I just go, okay, thank goodness we both relax. But
yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
That's a really good hint, actually. You know, a way to just working on yourself, and whether it be a meditation or the precepts or whatever it is that you connect with that help you just to be calmer too, and then passing that along.
Yeah, that's my kind of way, I guess, of distant treatment, is like walking with the dog and doing the precepts. Like sometimes I take a dog and include that dog in my practice at home.
Yeah, it's lovely. Thank you. And Janet, tell me, how do you deal with the human element of the animals?
It's become my favorite thing, because I feel like the animals have a human, if they're lucky, if they're not in the shelter. And so as each of you have shared, you know, there's issues, or there's just the stuff of life. So I've found that I always like to include the human. If I'm doing a distance session or an in-person session, which I'm really not doing any in-person sessions at the moment. But I like to invite them. And it's like, I would love you to be part of this. And also, they always want to know something to do. So they're always looking to somebody else to fix my baby, you know, fix my animal. It's like, well, I can teach you something, or you can be part of this. So I'll sometimes offer to do just like maybe a head or shoulder treatment. Would you like to see what it feels like? So you can understand what the animal's experiencing. I may not offer a hands-on, it might be a hands-off. I invite them to be with me, if it's in person or distant, during the session. I teach them the little Josh and Kyokyo Ho meditation. I might not tell them what it is. I may, it depends on who the person is, but I'll just teach them to breathe into their belly and, you know, expand out, whatever, being in the quiet, and ask them to help support while I'm offering the Reiki. Including, you know, I try to explain a little bit about that, how they can support and be part of, and how at the same time they'll be receiving. I always love to share that one of the things I love about Reiki as a modality compared to, say, animal massage or all kinds of other modalities that are healing modalities, we receive the benefit as everyone else does.
That's true too.
And I can't say that about anything else. So, you know, I'm always thrilled to be able to be part of that. So we're all in it together.
So true.
So it's not about exclusion. So at a distance session, I'll say, I'd really like to invite you to be part of it if you can, or if you choose. And I never force anybody to. And set it up in that way. So I think it's, as long as we're not saying like, I'm going to do this to you. That's a whole different feel. And it's like, well, no, you're not. Get out of my house. Leave me alone. But when you just offer or invite, then people can be more open, even if they don't know the first thing about it. You know, it might just take the edge off. And I'm really lucky. For over 10 years, I've worked with, it's usually 3 dogs right now. There's 2, and several have passed. But sometimes every day, distant Reiki. Sometimes, right now, it's 2 days a week. But I've really gotten to know them, and they've really gotten to know me.
Yes,
and
so nice.
Really, if I went back to look over the information, if I was a scientist and was documenting this, it's like unbelievable the depth that you can go to when you practice the same animal. So I think that's similar to having our own animals and having our personal practice, which is really important. Our personal practice with our animals. So
absolutely. That's a good point too. You know, I think that for people who might be listening, just, you know, you may not be a practitioner working professionally or anything like that, but just being at home in your own space and having that openness towards your animals and inviting them in and to your practice, and rather than feeling distracted, you know, that whole thing about, oh, you know, I'm trying to meditate and the dog's barking and the, you know, the cat's jumping on me and whatever. So it's like, actually, you know, be open to that, and rather than being irritated by that, just really relaxing into that, and knowing that we all share this world together. And when you're in that space, when you're meditating, whatever, that you are allowing yourself to be open for them to join you with that in whatever way they want to join you, you know.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing to do. Absolutely. Yeah, when I do distance healing, I also ask the human aspect of that to be a part of that, and to sit with the animal, and to, you know, if they meditate, then to meditate, or just to be relaxed with the animal in the same space. And I find that people are like, oh yeah, me, oh okay. And, you know, we were just talking about that before. They sort of don't see themselves as a part of the picture, right? But we're all a part of the picture. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a beautiful thing too. And it sounds like everybody's doing the same thing, you know, just that recognizing that human, you know, that we are a part of our animals' lives as much as they are a part of our lives. Yeah. So just to finish off, is there anything that anyone would like to I don't know, share about their work with animals, or they think that might be valuable for someone to hear?
I was actually just thinking, like, working in a shelter environment, it can be a bit stressful for, as you know, for both animal and human. Offering Reiki, just it can get quite noisy, as you said, like dogs barking everywhere. I choose to go in on days where it's not so busy, which lately I haven't been able to, but anyway. So I go and put plugs in my ears. Mm-hmm. They offer earplugs as part of the WHS thing. Mm-hmm. So I'll have my little blanket, I'll sit outside their kennels, and I'll just sit there and I'll meditate with them. So it's allowing yourself to get into that space and getting used to that, the barking. The barking for me is just, it's them communicating to me. And after a while, I found when I'm sitting there for a while, the dogs tend to settle. They will relax after a certain length of time. Every now and then there'll be a dog barking. But, yeah, just getting used to the sound and not letting it aggravate you or annoy you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just to happen.
Yeah, it's just changing your worldview, really, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Yeah, absolutely. How we see the world.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Ilona. And thank you for coming along today, Ilona. I appreciated that. And Janet, tell me, anything you'd like to pass on? I was going to ask Janet a little bit more about she's got some unique ways of getting information out there, haven't you? You know, with your business and things that you've developed. So I don't know if you'd like to just tell us a little bit about that, perhaps.
How do you mean?
Well, I don't know. You know, with your newsletter, you have you send out a regular newsletter with little stories, and you know, and you're setting up different online classes. And I just find that, you know, it's really interesting for people to know that there's so many different ways of that as a practitioner you could set up things like that, right. Or for people who are interested, that they can take part in those sorts of things.
So I'm in the process of reinventing myself. I kind of
thing, isn't it?
backed away because of the stuff of life for a few years, and so a year ago I completely redid my website. I broke down and paid somebody to do it. Oh God. Anyhow, you know all about that stuff. So when you said getting the newsletter out, I have not been consistent with that. It's like once a month was really good for me to do something, and I don't know what it was. And doing a blog, you know, I tried, but I don't like to think of myself as a writer. And a friend of mine who's an animal communicator has a virtual assistant, and I've seen her just getting stuff out there, and it's amazing what's happening. So I asked her about it, and so I have a virtual assistant.
Yep.
And she's actually making more work for me. because I have to, it's like I don't have to do anything, but trying to write a regular blog at least once a month, that's hard for me. But she does the newsletter every month. And she creates my social media. So I don't know anything about social media, and that's pretty much why I hired her. And I really love like the little pretty meditative kinds of things, but you can do that. I do my own. I have a Facebook page called Spirit Purrs from Rudy, my kitty Rudy that passed away. Healing Spirit Purrs is what it's called, from Rudy. And so I do once a week a little something, so you can do it. And I do a little, have you had your purr today, or happy healing Thursday, or something really simple like that. But I'm learning, taking some little webinars or whatever about marketing. And I'd never had a business class in my life. So the business end of this stuff is hard for me. And I think that's true of many people in this.
Absolutely.
Thing. So, and social media, it's like, I just, it boggles my mind. So to be able to, but you need to have a presence. It's really important. And you're so good with your newsletter being out there, but you need to be consistent.
Yeah.
And so whatever it is, whatever you can do in a balanced way. So I do have, so my virtual assistant has there's this little thing called Buffer, I think, and you can schedule everything on this one thing and hit one button. Evidently, I don't know, she does it. And then it goes to the Twitter and the Facebook and the Instagram and the whatever it goes to, whatever you want. So it's one-stop shopping kind of. And you can do things in advance. I have a friend who does her own stuff. She doesn't have somebody helping. But becoming consistent. And so then I finally have a big online workshop, I guess. I've been planning it for 10 years. Finally, 2 weeks ago it started. So learning that whole process, and like we're doing right here with the Zoom thing,
technology,
and technology, it's like,
I know, it's getting a handle on all of that. And I think, I see you trying
baby
those
steps.
things.
Baby steps.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Baby steps.
No, it's great. Yeah. Well done.
And finding what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. Oh, that's true too. Being able to throw away the experiences that don't work and moving forward with the ones that do. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Thank you for that, Janet. And Kathleen, anything you'd like to add?
I think this has been a wonderful discussion. I think that Animal Reiki can reach so many depths on the animal, the human, and the planet level, actually. And, we're healing everything when we're doing Reiki, and it can cause no harm. And I just hope that people get interested in it and more people come and take our classes and engage with the animals, because it's a beautiful way of getting to the humans. When I first started, I thought I was just going to work with animals. And what I realized is, while I started to work with animals, they taught me everything I needed to know, and then they brought me to humans. So opening up your practice to, I have so many students who say, I'm just working with animals, I don't like to work with people. And I say, open your heart. If your heart is open enough to work with the animals, it should be open enough to work with the people, because the animals are bringing them to you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know Ilona had to head off. She had to go to work. So thank you for joining us today. And I've so appreciated you guys joining. So thank you very much. And I'm going to say...
Thank you, Bronwen.
See you later.
Thank you for making this happen.
Thank you so much for having us. Bye-bye.
Bye.